on the ground. Do it now.
I am complying, Sheriff. My hands are visible.
I didn't ask for a debate. You fit the description. Down. Now.
What description, Sheriff? Be specific. I am a resident of this county.
Shut your mouth. You're resisting. I am not resisting. You are escalating.
This statement acts as the final trigger for the sheriff. The concept of a consensual encounter being dictated by the civilian undermines his perceived authority. Miller lunges forward. Lieutenant General Marcus Sterling, 54, is a 3-star general in the United States Army. As the Deputy Chief of Staff for G4 Logistics, he oversees a budget of billions and manages supply chains for armed forces across 3 continents. His annual base pay exceeds $180,000, supplemented by housing allowances and hazardous duty pay, accrued over 30 years of service. He has recently purchased a 15-acre estate in Fairhaven County for $1.2 million, a property he pays for via direct deposit from the Department of Defense. On this morning, General Sterling was performing a routine physical conditioning run, a habit maintained since his days at West Point. He is unarmed, carrying only a house key and his military identification card in a zippered pocket. Sheriff Jameson Buck Miller, 48, has served as the elected sheriff of Fairhaven County for 3 consecutive terms. His campaign platform centers on old-school law and order and keeping our neighborhoods safe. With a salary of $95,000, Miller wields disproportionate power in the semi-rural jurisdiction. However, his personnel file, obtained later through Freedom of Information Act requests, reveals a pattern of 12 formal complaints over the last 5 years. 8 of these complaints cite unprofessional conduct, bias-based profiling, or excessive force, specifically involving minority transients or new residents. Miller has never been formally disciplined, as the Internal Review Board consists of deputies he personally appointed. This raises a critical question regarding the initial moments of the interaction. When an officer issues conflicting commands, "Get on the ground," followed by "Turn around." While pointing a weapon, the civilian is placed in a psychological bind where any movement can be interpreted as a threat. In this scenario, General Sterling chose to freeze. Do you believe that refusing to physically lower oneself to the ground immediately constitutes resisting arrest? Or is standing still with hands up a valid form of compliance when facing a lethal threat? Pause the video and leave your verdict in the comments below. Compliance or self-preservation? Fairhaven County sits on the topographical and economic fault line of Virginia. To the west, the Blue Ridge Mountains frame acres of generational farmland, rusting silos, and single-wide trailers that have sat on the same plots since the 1970s. To the east, the urban sprawl of Washington, D.C. has begun to bleed outward, bringing with it tech executives, government contractors, and high-ranking military officials seeking privacy and square footage. The air's heavy with the scent of pine and humid asphalt. It is a transitional zone where the silence of the countryside is increasingly broken by the hum of luxury SUVs and the construction of gated driveways. The demographics are shifting rapidly. A population that was once 92% white and working class is now diversifying, creating a friction point over who belongs in the landscape. The roads are narrow and winding, lined with kudzu and oak trees, creating blind corners and isolated stretches where cellular service is spotty. In this environment, visual cues become the primary language of territory. A pickup truck with a muddy bed is seen as local. A jogger in high-end athletic gear, particularly a black man, is scrutinized by longtime residents as an anomaly, a glitch in their established pattern of reality. Sheriff Miller's psychological baseline is rooted in territorial dominance. For 20 years, he has patrolled these roads with the belief that he knows every legitimate resident by name or vehicle. His definition of policing relies heavily on the broken windows theory, adjusted for a rural setting. Anything unfamiliar is a potential threat to the order he is sworn to protect. He views the county not just as a jurisdiction, but as his property. When he sees a black man running down County Road 9 at 6 a.m., His cognitive bias does not register exercise, it registers flight. He bypasses the investigative step of the OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, and jumps straight to action, fueled by a confirmation bias that interprets Sterling's presence as inherently criminal. General Sterling operates on a completely different psychological frequency. His confidence is not derived from local authority, but from federal hierarchy. He has commanded thousands of troops in combat zones. He has briefed presidents. He possesses an internalized sense of security based on the belief that the law is a rigid, logical structure that protects those who follow it. He does not fear the police because he outranks them in the grander structure of government power. He assumes that once the confusion is cleared, the hierarchy will be restored. He is unaware that, to Sheriff Miller, he is currently nothing more than a suspect in a burglary that never happened. The escalation begins at timestamp, Arrow 6-14-22. The body cam audio picks up the distinct sound of the taser deploying. The pop of the nitrogen cartridge is followed instantly by the clicking of the electrical arc. "Ride the lightning, boy! Get down!" Sheriff Miller screams this as the probes discharge. However, the video shows that only one probe makes contact with Sterling's shoulder, while the other snags in the loose fabric of his moisture-wicking shirt. The circuit is not completed. There is no neuromuscular incapacitation. Sterling does not fall. He flinches, swipes the wire away with a sharp, disciplined movement, and maintains his footing. You deployed a less lethal weapon on a compliant subject. You are now in violation of federal civil rights statutes. Sterling's voice has dropped an octave. It is the command voice used to direct troops under fire. He does not attack the sheriff. He stands his ground, his hands returning to the visible position. The failure of the taser to drop the suspect causes Miller to panic. The breakdown of his primary force option shatters his illusion of control. "Dispatch! He's fighting! Taser ineffective! Shots fired! Taser fired! Send backup, code 3. Miller retreats to the cover of his patrol vehicle's door, hyperventilating. His radio transmission is garbled, breathless, and factually incorrect. He claims the subject is fighting, yet the camera at 06-14-45 clearly shows Sterling standing 15 feet away, removing the barb from his shirt with calm precision. Miller's claim of fighting is a psychological projection. He feels threatened. Therefore, the subject must be attacking, even if the subject is motionless. "I am not fighting you. I am waiting for a competent officer to arrive. Do not draw your firearm again." Sterling's instruction to the sheriff reverses the power dynamic. He is now issuing commands. This is intolerable to Miller's ego. The sheriff holsters the taser and unholsters his Glock 17 for the second time, aiming it directly at Sterling's head. "Get on your knees, hands on your head. Last warning." The distance between them is 20 feet. The backdrop is a dense thicket of trees. At 6:15:10, Sterling slowly lowers himself to his knees. He does not do this out of fear, but out of tactical calculation. He recognizes that Miller is hyper-aroused and trembling. The risk of an accidental discharge is high. Sterling crosses his ankles and interlaces his fingers behind his head, the universal position of submission for a prisoner of war. "I am down. Do not shoot." Miller rushes forward. The camera shakes violently as he closes the gap. He does not holster his weapon before making contact, a gross violation of safety procedure. With the gun in his right hand, he uses his left hand to shove Sterling's head forward, forcing his face into the gravel. "Gotcha now! You think you're tough? You think you can run from me?" Miller's panting, his speech rapid and disjointed. He's experiencing an adrenaline dump crash, where the body shakes as cortisol floods the system. He roughly grabs Sterling's left wrist, twisting it behind his back with torque sufficient to strain the rotator cuff. He jams the gun barrel into the base of Sterling's neck. "Give me your other hand! Stop resisting!" Sterling is not resisting. His right hand is still on his head. Miller is unable to grab it because his own hand is occupied holding the gun against Sterling's spine. The sheriff is creating a physical impossibility, demanding the subject's hand. while refusing to holster his weapon to cuff him properly. "Holster your weapon, Sheriff, and I will give you my hand. You cannot cuff me with a gun in your palm." Sterling offers the solution to the puzzle. Miller, realizing his error but unwilling to acknowledge it, holsters the weapon and aggressively yanks Sterling's right arm back, slapping the handcuffs on with unnecessary force. The ratchets click tightly against the bone. "You're done. You're going away for a long time. Assault on an officer, resisting arrest, burglary tools." Miller lists charges that have no basis in reality. There was no assault. There was no resistance. The burglary tools are non-existent. Miller is audibly constructing a narrative to justify the use of force, speaking for the benefit of the recording he knows is running. He hauls Sterling to his feet by the chain of the handcuffs, causing Sterling to wince for the first time. The timestamp is 06:17:30. Sirens are audible in the distance. Miller marches Sterling to the hood of the cruiser and slams his chest onto the hot metal. He begins a search of Sterling's pockets. "Let's see what you stole. Let's see who you really are." Miller reaches into the small zippered pocket of Sterling's running shorts. He pulls out a single key and a plastic ID card. He holds the card up to the sunlight to read it. The camera focuses on the card at 06/18:05. It is not a Virginia driver's license. It is a Common Access Card, CAC, with a vertical blue stripe. The text is clear: United States Department of Defense. Below the photo of Sterling in full dress uniform is the rank, Lieutenant General. This brings us to a complex legal and moral dilemma. Officers are trained to command control of a scene for their own safety. However, when an officer creates the chaos through contradictory commands and poor emotional regulation, does the burden of de-escalation shift to the citizen? General Sterling remained calm, yet he was assaulted. If he had panicked and run, he likely would have been shot. Who is responsible for the escalation here? The man refusing to kneel in the mud without cause, or the officer pointing a gun at a jogger? Leave your analysis in the comments below. The turning point is not explosive. It is characterized by a sudden, suffocating silence. Sheriff Miller stares at the ID card. The camera captures his reflection in the cruiser's window. His mouth is slightly open, his brow furrowed. He blinks, looking from the card to the back of the man he has just handcuffed. The cognitive dissonance is visible. In Miller's world, a burglary suspect running down a country road does not carry a level 3 security clearance and outrank the entire local government structure. The script he has been following, arrest the outsider, charge him, process him, has just collided with a reality that carries immense federal weight. This is you? Miller's voice has lost its aggressive edge. It is now small, confused. Check the back pocket, Sheriff. Read the Geneva Convention category if you're confused. Then get your supervisor on the radio. Actually, don't. Wait for the state troopers. They are arriving now. Sterling's voice is muffled against the hood of the car, but the authority is absolute. Blue lights flash against the trees as two Virginia State Police cruisers skid to a halt behind Miller's vehicle. The state troopers approach with weapons drawn, assessing the scene. They see a uniformed sheriff and a handcuffed suspect. However, as the lead trooper, Sergeant Davies, gets closer, he recognizes the sheriff's demeanor. Miller is pale. He is holding the ID card like it is a radioactive isotope. "Buck, what's going on? You good?" Davies calls out. Miller turns, holding up the card. He says he's a general. Davies steps forward, takes the card, and looks at Sterling. He looks at the rank. He looks at the handcuffs. He looks back at Miller. The realization hits Sergeant Davies instantly. He knows exactly who lives in the new estate up the road. Oh, Christ. "Buck, take them off. Take them off right now." But he was resisting. He fit the description. Miller is mumbling, retreating into his fabricated narrative, but the conviction is gone. There is no description, Buck. There hasn't been a burglary in 3 weeks. Take the cuffs off. Davies holsters his weapon and moves to intervene physically, pushing Miller aside to unlock the cuffs himself. The metal clicks open. General Sterling stands up, rotating his shoulders. He does not rub his wrists. He turns to face Miller, who's now standing by the fender of his car, looking at his boots. Sterling looks at Sergeant Davies. "Secure his weapon, trooper. I want a supervisor from your agency here. And I want the FBI field office in Richmond notified that a federal officer has been assaulted and unlawfully detained." Miller looks up, eyes wide. "Federal officer? You're just a jogger." "I am a lieutenant general in the United States Army," Sterling corrects him, his voice ice cold. "And you have just made the last arrest of your career." The legal aftermath was not a swift stroke of justice, but a grinding, painful dismantling of Sheriff Miller's life. General Sterling did not scream or throw punches. He utilized the legal system with the same efficiency he applied to military logistics. The lawsuit was filed 3 weeks later in federal district court. Sterling versus Miller in Fairhaven County. The complaint alleged violations of the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable seizure, excessive force, and assault and battery. It specifically targeted the qualified immunity defense, usually afforded to police officers. Sterling's legal team, high-powered civil rights attorneys from D.C., argued that Miller's conduct violated clearly established statutory or constitutional rights, of which a reasonable person would have known. The body cam footage was the linchpin. It proved there was no resistance. It proved Miller lied about the fighting. It proved the taser deployment was punitive, not defensive. Internal Affairs for the state police conducted an independent investigation. Their findings were devastating. They uncovered not just the errors in this stop, but a systemic pattern of falsified reports in Miller's previous arrests. The description Miller claimed Sterling fit never existed. There was no burglary call that morning. Miller had fabricated the probable cause after the fact to justify the stop. 6 months after the incident, under immense pressure from the state attorney general, and facing a recall election, the county board of supervisors voted to suspend Miller. 2 weeks later, he resigned, but the civil suit continued. The county's insurance carrier, recognizing that a jury trial involving a highly decorated black general abused by a rural white sheriff would result in a catastrophic verdict, pushed for a settlement. They wanted to avoid the discovery phase, which would likely expose years of corruption in the department. The final settlement was agreed upon. $10 million. It was one of the largest single-victim police misconduct payouts in the state's history. The amount was not just for the physical injury, but for the punitive damages associated with racial profiling and the violation of public trust. Crucially, the settlement included a clause that stripped Miller of his peace officer certification. He could never work in law enforcement again, in any state. However, the payout money comes from the county's liability insurance, which is funded by taxpayer dollars. The citizens of Fairhaven County, not Buck Miller personally, are footing the bill for his misconduct. Miller lost his job, but he did not lose his personal savings. This raises the final discussion point. When police officers commit misconduct, that results in multi-million-dollar settlements. Should the money come from the public tax fund? Or should officers be required to carry personal liability insurance, like doctors and contractors? If Miller had to pay personally, would he have been so quick to draw his gun? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Today, Marcus Sterling has retired from the Army. He still lives in the estate in Fairhaven, though he rarely runs on the county roads anymore. He built a private gym on his property. He used a portion of the settlement money to establish a legal defense fund for low-income residents of the county who have been targeted by unlawful police stops. He serves on several corporate boards and remains a pillar of the community, though his relationship with local law enforcement remains cool and distant. Jameson Buck Miller is currently unemployed. His wife filed for divorce 3 months after his resignation, citing the financial strain and his erratic behavior. He was forced to sell his home to cover legal fees for his criminal defense. He was charged with misdemeanor assault, for which he received probation. He currently lives in a rented apartment in a neighboring county and works part-time in a warehouse, driving a forklift. The power he once wielded on the roadside is gone, replaced by the monotony of hourly wage labor. The camera captures reality, but it requires a willingness to see it to create justice. In the case of General Sterling, the footage served as an undeniable counter-narrative to the sheriff's lies. But one must ask, if the victim had been a 19-year-old college student instead of a 3-star general, would the outcome have been a $10 million settlement or a plea deal for resisting arrest? The authority of the badge is powerful, but it is fragile when exposed to the light of evidence. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.